Welcome to Beyond the Walls podcast. I'm your host, Kylie, and I am so excited to be able to have this conversation with you to help teach you tools, ideas, support on how to go beyond your walls too. Are you tired of feeling stuck and trapped and like a victim in your own life? Maybe you need to find a new way to look at it. Look at your situation from a different angle. Maybe we need to learn and take a look to see how we can re-choose or recreate a life that is going to bring you joy and purpose and feel free and exciting. So let's get started on today's message. Welcome back. I have a topic that has been on my mind a lot lately, which I'm really proud of for thinking ahead. I'm not generally one that thinks ahead very well. I often find myself caught off guard. I think because probably I like to just wing it. I like to not have a plan. I hate being pinned down and having a set schedule. But something that creates for my world is then it's really easy to just be reactive. And I'm always like in the moment of something. I'm like, I wanted to be on the other end of this. Like I wanted to catch it ahead of time. I thought I had done enough to be ready. And so if you're anything like me, then this conversation is for you. Okay. I want us to go into 2025 feeling like we are in control. Not that we're in control of life and all of the things, but from a sense of like, okay, I'm going in intentionally. I'm going in with purpose. I'm going in with a somewhat of a plan, or at least like I'm aware, I'm present enough to know what's happening around me. I want to like have this balance between not being completely caught off guard and surprised, but also it's still going to happen. Even as prepared as I might be, I'm still going to get caught off prepared sometimes. I want to have grace and patience for myself, but I don't want to be like completely blindsided by things that are always happening, right? Okay, so we have less than 100 days left until 2025. So not to send you into panic mode. Those of you that are already like super hardcore planners, you probably already know this and have a lot planned out. So happy for you. We have Halloween coming up, whether you make that a big deal or not a super big deal in my world. I still have kids at home that love candy, so they still really care. We do have the elections. Then we go into Thanksgiving. Then we have Christmas. Then we have New Year's. Then depending on what other cultures and religious communities you're a part of, there's even different kind of holidays and more holidays, or you're not religious at all and you don't celebrate any of those holidays, or however you celebrate community. It's in our faces around the holidays. It's like the shopping, it's the decorating, it's the parties, work events, trips and travel. There's kids events if you have school-age kids. There is so much to plan, to prepare for, to pay for. There's pressure to create this beautiful, special, like emotional connection and these traditions to keep up. And as much as we want this time to be one of like getting ready for the new year, now we have to prepare for all of our goals and things that we're going to set. Now we've got to get healthy for 2025. We got to go in with a plan and all of these New Year resolutions, right? Like the list goes on that are jam-packed in these 3 months that I think we don't necessarily carry all the time. It doesn't feel as consolidated as the rest of the year as these next 3 months do. And so let's decide right now, what do we want to focus on in these next 3 months? And as much as this holiday promotes hopes for, dreams about, ideals for, is like peace and joy, family, connection, fun, vacations, celebrations, right? Like they're all like happy, positive things in theory. but they're just heavily laced with pressure and disappointment. And we get trapped in this fear of perfectionism, and it's got to be this perfect way. And it exposes our weaknesses. Now, several episodes back, when my sister was still doing the podcast with me, we put together an episode called Your Weaknesses Showing. And I want to have this conversation today that is Your Weaknesses Showing Holiday Edition. Okay. Go back and listen to that episode. It's a great one. It's got lots of really great nuggets. But let's talk about specifically the challenges that get brought out in us during this holiday season. So, one of the big premises that I want you to really listen from is that the things that happen in these next 3 months that create upset, that cause disappointment, that cause us to feel like we're not enough, that we're failing, they trigger us with our family, like all kinds of things happen. Like we're pressured with these quote unquote negative feelings. What I want us to be able to hear from is if you are willing to consider the possibility that this is not a special time, like it's not stressful because it's the holidays. It's not extra stressful because of Christmas or the particular traditions that your family does. So then what would it be, right? What am I talking about? I want you to consider that this time of year just makes it super hard to avoid. And the rest of the year, it's just easy to avoid. And most of the time, that's what we're doing. We avoid resolving these conflicts. We avoid growing in these areas. Like all of the ways that we feel like on the regular average day, week, month, that we feel like we're failing, right? We're not doing well as a family, or we're not doing well financially, or we're not doing well as a parent, or we're not living the life we want to be living. We're not healthy. We're not as fit as we want to be. Like we're not meeting these goals. Like those are our challenges all year long, but they become unavoidable at this holiday time. Okay. I want to share with you about my own personal life. So if you are new to the podcast, welcome. I am an extrovert. I love to be with people. I love to connect. I love to share with other people. I know I have feelings about my feelings immediately. Okay. That has its challenges when I am faced up against the opposite extreme of me. And I married the opposite extreme of me. Okay. So my way is not right. My way is just, that's my way. And my husband's way, who's the opposite extreme, is his way. So one, just an extra bonus tip, stop making each other wrong for the ways that we process, for the ways that we show up, for our natural way of being. Let's lower that significance and stop competing with one another. But anyway, it takes a lot of work to communicate between an introvert and an extrovert, between an avoider and an attacker, between somebody who shares about their feelings, and someone who has to really take a long time to process. The internal processor and the external processor. The one who cares about traditions and the one that's like, I don't care, just wing it, whatever, right? So I know that in some of the most challenging seasons of my marriage, and I think a lot of women can relate to this. I've heard a lot of women say they relate to it or they're wrestling with it, and it is real and it's hard. And that is this challenge to feel like your partner is emotionally available. And so how that has shown up in my marriage through the years is that it just has created so much pressure, so much meaning and intention on these specific holidays. And so I think there's two things that are happening at the same time. And one, that is this pressure of the ideal, the pressure that romance movies and books and marketing people put on us of how love is supposed to be expressed. How do we have these romantic gestures? How are we supposed to like create this magical feeling, to then like it being so much pressure, like it has to meet this expectation on this one particular day, and it makes it just nearly impossible to be pleased, right? Like if it is not like over the top, beyond imaginable, then it loses all of its significance. There's so much pressure on it that it guarantees this almost like automatic sense of failure. Nothing could possibly meet up to it, between what we've like produced in our brains of what it should be like and then the reality of what it's actually like. The reality never meets the ideal in our minds. And so I know that like it just clicked for me one year when I realized, I was like, okay, I think there's so much pressure on these individual days, these one particular, this 5 times a year. Okay. There would be like in a relationship, you've got birthday, Christmas, um, your anniversary, and Valentine's Day, even, right? Like a completely made up holiday that we just um, commercialized. I mean, really, all of them can become commercialized. But like these significant times that like I'm just supposed to feel extra loved on those days. And I think if you're in a tough season in your relationship right now, or you're with a partner that is having a really hard time showing up in a way that you guys can hear each other, then I imagine you can relate with me on this one. And I think what I realized for myself was that I was feeling so unloved and depleted on the average day of the year, on a random Tuesday of September, right? Like all the time, was there this feeling of community and connection and safety? Was I communicating in a way that was honest and real? Was I having healthy boundaries? Were we expressing our wants and our needs? Were we feeling like we heard each other? We were seeing each other? Were we supporting each other on the regular? Versus like I'm putting up with and I don't have those needs met on the regular day. And so much pressure to make up for it on these special holidays. And I think that's kind of just the example for you. I think so. In all honesty, I think that has been something that I've really had to wrestle through. My husband and I have had to really wrestle through. And I know that on the years where we felt that love the majority of the time, then it allowed a lot more peace during these holidays. There wasn't as much heightened pressure. And I think I want that kind of a conversation, or that kind of just headspace for you to be listening to this conversation through, that just maybe possibly that's the kind of weakness that the holidays we can't avoid, because it creates this like we can no longer avoid this feeling of like just this disconnection that's been happening all year long, or the unresolved feelings, or if it's been, especially when it comes to our families, if there's unresolved childhood trauma, or the things that happened 5 years ago, that one time this something happened and we're still holding on to it, right? A lack of forgiveness, a lack of feeling like you've been setting boundaries, or even you've just been putting up with something and nobody knows about it. That you've just always been like, okay, fine, we'll do it their way because they're my parents, or this is how it's always been done. Those feelings, those experiences, that way of viewing your relationship, of your way of engaging with your relationships, they're there all year long. But when we're in this holiday season, when society, the world, our friends and family are having these experiences right now all of a sudden we're just challenged to be in competition. Like now you're supposed to be with your family, where like you don't have to get together with them all the time. But this time of year, you're supposed to be with your family, right? And it's in those times where we're tempted to feel like this is how it's supposed to be. Or somehow we feel extra discouraged during Christmas because we don't have the family we wanted it to be like. or something has changed that's out of our circumstances, right? Maybe there was a death or some kind of a loss or a divorce, or there's just something particular now that has changed the dynamic. It's changed the conversation. And those have a layer that there does need to be grief. There needs to be processing. And those are special circumstances that of course are going to make these times extra challenging. But what I'm really talking about is, let's talk about personal security. Okay. How is your personal security all year long? Are you feeling connected and loved and honored throughout the year? Do you feel respected throughout the year? Do you respect yourself throughout the year? Do you feel like you know who you are? Or are you having an identity crisis, right? Like, are you feeling like, oh my gosh, like I have to really mature through these particular things, right? You might already be aware of some of your weaknesses. So, where I want to bring you some freedom today is to realize that they're not suddenly a problem because it's Christmas. They're not suddenly a problem because you have to now make some decisions and you have to actually like face these uncomfortable conversations. And I want you to just kind of use that as a space to realize like, oh, Christmas is just exposing my insecurity. These planning, getting our calendars on the same page and communicating about who's going to host and who always hosts, they're challenging my security of like, do I speak up for myself? Do I stand up for myself? Do I feel honored in the family? Like, do I feel like I'm considered? Or do we like just put up with it the rest of the year, or it never becomes an issue until all of a sudden it's this time of year and this particular day with all of these added pressures and expectations? Now it's a problem. So I hope that you can hear and you can see, and maybe just take it down a notch or two, right? To help it be like, oh, I just now I'm actually upset about it all year long. It's always a problem. I just don't ever have to deal with it until this particular day comes up. But it's so easy to just blame this particular day and all of these pressures. And so, again, something I say a lot on this podcast is being able to really be clear with what you're actually upset about, right? And I want you to see that, like, oh, I'm not upset because today I feel disrespected. There's something much deeper that's going on all the time. And so, how can we go through these next few months if we've never been dealing with it? We don't have to add the extra pain, the extra pressure, the extra significance, because this one particular day, we have to face it. And so, how can we go through these seasons if we haven't started processing and repairing those relationships or being secure? And accepting who we are and who we aren't, and accepting our families for who they are and who they aren't, or our pasts, whatever circumstances we have, we're alone, like whatever it is that we're facing, to realize that that's all that's really happening, is that there's extra pressure now, that it shouldn't be this way. But when we can own that, like, if it's a problem on Thanksgiving, it's a problem all year long. And so you have choices to make. The decision in front of you right now is not to just tackle Thanksgiving, and it should have been differently. And this is extra uncomfortable because now you have to face it. Oh, is this something I really want to face? Is this something that really bothers me all year long? In October, in August, in May? Like, is this a problem in the spring? And why is it such a problem now? And so maybe if we're going to just make a decision that's like, you know what, I want to repair my relationships with my family. How would I repair it in May? Put on that kind of an attitude, that kind of a thought process, that kind of pressure. Put the pressure of a May on yourself while you're having to face Thanksgiving. So consider how you just are or are not feeling secure on a regular Tuesday, and not adding that you're extra insecure because it's Thanksgiving or because New Year's is coming up. You see how that guilt, that unresolved, like owning what our upsets are actually about and even being aware of it all year long makes us now all of a sudden like just, it's 3 times the problem on these holiday times. And so instead, we got to just make a decision. Is it a problem for me on a regular day? Yes or no? And if it is yes or no, then carry that foremost going into these holidays. I think the other thing that it really just challenges us with is our ability, our willingness to express our wants. So again, if you're keeping it in mind on an average Tuesday in May, how do you do it expressing your wants? When there's like no pressure, when there's no expectations, there's no external pressures, there's nothing extra special happening. Are you willing to stand up for yourself on those days? Do you invite people to your home for dinner? Do you coordinate plans? Do you get with friends? Do you have business meetings? Like, is it somebody's birthday, right? Like, there's gatherings, there's all of the things that happen in these next 3 months happen over the course of the whole year with just much less frequency and less pressure. So if you're not great on a regular Tuesday in May at expressing your wants and needs, then you don't need to make it twice as damaging on Thanksgiving Day. You don't have to be twice as disrespected, twice as victimized, twice as insignificant on these special days than you do on the regular Tuesday in May. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense to you. And I hope that you're not hearing it from this space of like, oh, then I'm an extra failure, right? Like, you're not twice the failure on these days. It just should bring you a little bit more freedom to lower that significance down. And then you get to make a decision that's like, is it actually a problem for me? Why or why not? And then what do I actually really want to do about it? Why or why not? Is now the time? So let's say you're listening to this and you're like, oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Maybe Thanksgiving and blowing it up with now all of a sudden, like I'm putting my foot down and I'm going to start becoming demanding and I'm going to get what I want and I'm just going to show up. Maybe Thanksgiving this year is not the day to start becoming the new creation overnight and being black and white different and messing with the way things have always been. But what's a baby step you can take? What is something that you can do to start moving in that direction? What is a way that you can bring these people that matter to you the most along the journey with you? How can you start to be honest with yourself and start to be honest with them? What's a small way that you can start to, like, without causing conflict? And by the way, I want you to really hear, know, believe that you expressing your feelings might cause conflict, but it's not a reason to not bring those feelings up for fear of causing conflict. And more importantly, I want you to know that if you're dealing with another safe person that is willing and is committed to being in a relationship with you, that if you can figure out a way to communicate it in a loving way and an honest way, and they're willing to communicate with you in a loving and honest way, it most likely is not actually going to cause the conflict that you think it's going to be. It might be uncomfortable. It might cause some hurt feelings. It might cause some confusion, and it might take time, and it might take some repairing, and it might take multiple conversations. But that's not necessarily conflict, and it certainly isn't necessarily a reason to not do it, and that it's bad, and that it's wrong, and that it shouldn't be done. I hope that you can hear that and know that. So the other thing that I think it really causes conflict with is this confusing space of like being flexible. How do we meet our loved ones' feelings? How do we meet these expectations or the pressures that are honest? They might really be real, right? Like you might have an in-law or a family member that's like, this tradition means the most to me. This is how it's always been. I cook the Thanksgiving meal and I host it. And anything other than that is just like the worst thing that could ever happen, right? And you're like, it's not worth the battle. I'm not going to do it. How can we be flexible, be honest, express our needs and our wants, make requests, considering ourselves and considering the other person? And I think so often when we go all year long without standing up for ourselves, when we go all year long without feeling seen and heard, without feeling secure and loved, when we go all year long not showing up in a way that we really want to show up, it makes it twice the pressure than on these holidays. But it also, then it gets in the way and it gets confusing and we make it this or that, all or nothing. It's your way or my way. And I want you to know and believe that there's so much space for there to be a community. There's so much space for our needs to get met where we can have a win-win. And so just know that most likely if you've been on the extreme of like not being able to advocate for yourself, of not being able to ask for things or to be able to feel like you've been seen and heard and you're loved all year long, then you want to really be careful in this space when you start to take action. You really do want to be careful and start becoming aware and to separate and to know that there is room for there to be a win-win. But it can't be a win-win until you speak up. It can't be a win-win until the other people involved even know that there's another way that you want to be considered. And it also means that like you don't really know yet if that other person is willing to be flexible. You don't even know if they're willing to support you or not because you've never given them that opportunity. Or maybe you did and you just did it in a really harsh, abrupt way and they couldn't hear it at the time. If you tried this 5 years ago, I promise you, you're different people. You're a different person. A lot has changed in 5 years and they're a different person. So what if this is the year to like try again? Then the question becomes, how can I do it in a way that is honoring to myself and honoring to them? How can I baby step my way into this where I can sort of just test the waters and see how open they might be? How can I move towards and move in this direction of creating something different? What if they're willing to create it differently with me, right? That to me is like the ideal. Like when we can create it together, it's not like I'm just going to come up with this grand plan and then expect you to just suddenly become a different person and you just do whatever it is that I want to do. If all we've ever done is done it your way, right? So I think even with that, right, when I was sharing about like with just the pressures that I was experiencing in my own marriage, when I'm not feeling loved all year long and I have this extra pressure on the holidays, the place for me to start was on the average day. It was building those muscle memories on the days where it wasn't significant, where there wasn't added pressure, there wasn't societal pressure, right? The boring, monotonous days where it was low significance. The hurt was not as hurtful. The risk didn't feel as risky. And so I want to just use this time to just cast a vision for you of what could be possible. That what if the holidays are so painful and so discouraging because what's actually true is that you've been avoiding having this connection all year long and now you just can't face it anymore. But now you have all of the world pressure surrounding you with a magnifying glass, like maximizing the potential in this situation. And it's supposed to be this glorious, wonderful thing. I have created this course in a very succinct way to coach you through these next few months. If you want to join me to figure out okay, yeah, that's probably true. I haven't been this way all year long, but now I've got to go through this most painful, the most pressury time that we're going to experience all year long in these next 3 months. I want to come alongside of you and be with you to help you process that. I have 6 walls that are video courses that you get to go through and have a worksheet to talk you through it, to give you some practical tips, to questions to ask yourself, to journal about, a specific podcast episode that you can kind of go deeper in with it. And then let's have a coaching session around it that can really tailor to your specific situation. How can you overcome the pressure and the stress and the significance of these upcoming months to feel like you do have a say in the matter? How can you make the best of the situation? How can you start to take those steps towards being a woman who is secure, who is not afraid to be able to be seen and be heard, to be somebody who can honor yourself and honor the people around you, who you can experience a holiday without it feeling like you're being rejected at your core, and you feel loved and you feel seen and you feel confident in who you are, that you get to show up and not be so worried about how you're feeling, that you get to actually encourage the people around you. You get to show up and build up those around you, that you can feel secure in your budget, in the way you can and cannot do things, that you get to really make a decision about how you're going to spend the time and what is the best use of your time. Maybe you got to figure out how to have boundaries to say I can't do all of it. How am I possibly going to manage my own mind and my stress, the guilt about the things I can and cannot do? That you get to show up and feel like, you know what? I don't want to own that kind of pressure. I'm going to put that one down, but this is the one I'm going to pick up. Walking into 2025 feeling like you have a say in the matter. You actually have a say in your future. You actually do get to have a say. It's not up to the other people around you to tell you how you have to show up for them. You get to decide, how do I want to show up for them, and how do I want to show up for myself? If we could get onto that proactive side, right? Like that was in the beginning where I feel like, oh man, I'm caught off guard again. I want to find the baby steps where I can start to just tweak it, where I'm a little bit more proactive than I am reactive. Instead of fearing and avoiding having a say in these situations, and then I feel even more reactive, I can start to at least be honest with myself about what I'm avoiding, about what really matters to me. And then I get to bravely, courageously step towards the direction I want to be. And you don't have to go at it alone. I would love to come alongside of you to help you with that, to help you just start to even have some foundation about what's really going on. Because that's the biggest trap that we get into, is that because during this time of year, all of the weight of these events are just so much bigger than they actually are. And then it feels like it's causing so much more damage than it actually has to. So let's lower that significance together. Let's figure out and put a plan to help you step into 2025 feeling great, feeling okay with how it actually went, and how to manage our ideal situation with reality. And being able to try something and to fail instead of it being perfectionism and it's never good enough. Let's create something great together. Thank you for joining me today. I hope that brought you a lot of encouragement and some information to be able to apply to your own life and to start taking down those walls that are in your way. What is that one thing that you want to take on and take with you today? I would love to hear from you and to hear about it. Follow me here on the podcast so that you're alerted and don't miss any upcoming episodes. You can find me on Instagram or even on my website at beyondthewallspodcast.com. If you want more help, I offer one-on-one coaching and would love to connect with you. Until next time, have a great day.